Well, welcome to today's very exciting first ever MSP Minds Live. We got some awesome rock stars on the line, some actual IT pros to share with you some killer tips about how IT services can absolutely thrive in the post-COVID-19 era. My name is Ari Sherbel. I'm the lead evangelist at Atera. I'm joined with my co-host, none other than the awesome and wonderful Isaac Eliyahu. Isaac, how are you doing?
I am so excited, ready to get started, ready to get talking. Let's do this.
Big time. And for the first ever, we got actual MSP IT service geniuses on the line live with us who are ready to share their wisdom with us. Matt Hunn and Daniel Jensen. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thank you.
Doing well, Ari.
You guys are fantastic. Welcome to the show. This is going to be a ton of fun. All right, so let's just get straight into it. Really excited. So just for some context, like why on earth is Atera hosting specifically MSP Minds Live? To help IT services, MSPs, internal IT streamline and grow their MSP business. Now more than ever, this stuff is needed. And who better than actual MSPs, actual IT services who are crushing it absolutely and specifically now. So we're just going to quickly go over what we're going to cover, and then we're going to let you introduce today's IT rock stars, Dan and Matt. Really excited to meet them. You guys got a lot of good stuff to share. First and foremost, which businesses are best to focus on is getting ideal clients. One of the biggest challenges that happened since COVID and has continued to evolve since is, you guys might have clients, but then the economy changes. And then you don't have clients, or the clients are struggling, can't keep you on. All these, narratives change. So what are the best businesses to focus on post COVID-19? And no matter what's going on, how do you add more revenue streams to your current service? What are ways to optimize your current work so that you're generating more revenue? Matt and Dan have a lot of secrets there. Plus the set of tools and best practices recommended by Daniel and Matt. Again, this is all field tested. This is actually what's going on. None of this is theoretical. We are not in a university. We are in the real world. And how to be prepared for a potential second wave of Corona. And the fun part, Q&A live with Daniel and Matt. Isaac, anything to add just before we get a chance to meet Daniel and Matt?
I just think everyone's just as excited as we are. And like everyone just wants to get talking already. They want to hear what's the tea? What's the tea? So let's get this moving. Let's get the talk going.
All right. So first and foremost, meet none other than the awesome good friend of Atera's, good friend of ours, Daniel Jensen. Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself, your business, your history, what childhood was like.
If I want to get that deep, that's a whole lot of therapy. Hey, thanks for having us on. I think this is fun. It's great to talk to folks that are in the biz. I've been in the biz for a whole lot of years. I've been in it for about 25 years and counting. Started out, it was as a child. Let's get into my childhood. As a child, it was kind of my passion, like most of us, I think, that are MSPs. We enjoyed computers. I started back with a Commodore 64, believe it or not, if you remember what any of those things were. That was a Christmas present that I just turned into a career. So I did some corporate IT internships, kind of cut my teeth on that, had some great mentors along the way. One of my coworkers got me introduced to a guy, his name was Robert Stevens, and was starting a little company in Minneapolis back then, and I hold up my badge because it's kind of fun. A little company called the Geek Squad. Nobody heard of us. We were a bunch of 20-something snotty kids that enjoyed technology, and my second week of work, I was on the cover of People magazine. So I think I've always taken that background that I have with Geek Squad and some of my other experiences, and I like to think of IT as being something that should be fun. So it should be something that's fun not only for us as MSPs, but something that should be fun for our customers or clients or partners that are out there, because it's technology, and technology can be spooky, and we understand it, but it's spooky for folks on the other end, especially when we're dealing with COVID and Corona, and how are we navigating some of that? So since then, I've had a couple different businesses bought and sold, and since January, I am back in the marketplace again, and providing IT services, and I had a 5-year corporate stint, and now I'm back doing it as a business owner, and I've missed it, and I love it. So this is, for me, this is a lot of fun. There's a lot of therapy, I guess, to get back into chatting about IT.
And it should be fun. We need to love what we do. That's the bottom line. We got to enjoy our day to day.
And love that one-liner. I think it could be like a newspaper headline, how a Christmas present became my career.
Wow.
That was really good.
Bastardized the hobby.
We need to choose our presents more wisely going forward, I think, for all of us.
Clearly.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And Mr. Matt Hunn. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the IT business, and you were in the Marine Corps.
Well, that's right, Ari. Oddly, that's how I started my career in IT. So I did not, like many of you out there, I did not actually, make a conscious decision. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to go to school for this. I'm going to pursue an IT career. When I enlisted in the Marine Corps after high school, that's the MOS that I was given. So I received training and my entry-level training anyway into IT. And once exiting the military, I continued on that path, finishing college and tech school certifications, kind of the usual path. But did have a secret security clearance when I was in, and that allowed me to get experience on some rather sophisticated networks, for example, like the NOC at Quantico, some places like that. So at a very young age, I was able to be mentored by some just outstanding IT professionals, get experience on very sophisticated networks, and it was a wonderful opportunity. So that's kind of my start. Back in 2005, I opened my MSP, and we've been growing ever since. We started as a one-man shop, making lots of sacrifices to start the business. And fortunately, over the years, we've been doing something right, and now we've grown from a one-man shop to a staff of full-timers and contractors in 2 different states. So that's kind of how I got into it. And our customers range from anything you can possibly imagine. We don't go after a specific vertical, but everything from cancer treatment centers to aviation, et cetera.
Wow, amazing, really. I mean, that experience can only help you in the future, and that's how you get started, and that just, you run with it. Beautiful. Ari, should we get started?
We should absolutely get started, and I definitely want to see some, behind the scenes work about your work in Quantico. See, maybe for another time. But yeah, so maybe just to start things off, I would sort of suggest almost it's like the fundamental aspect of having an MSP business, which is your clients. Dan, what would you say is a vertical or growth businesses that MSPs should be focusing on now more than ever? What's your perspective on it? How do you keep clients? How have you crushed it consistently no matter what's going on in the economy?
So I think the first thing, and I kind of use that vernacular when I started talking, the very important takeaway that I have is I don't refer to them as clients. Number one, I don't refer to them as customers. They're partners. We are all partners in this. I'm here to help you. You're here to help me. We help each other. It's a relationship. We all grow together. Life is good. There was another takeaway that I had once upon a time where we had a sales meeting and we were talking about who are you? Who do you want to be, right? Do you want to be a partner or do you want to be a vendor? And I think a lot of folks out there in the marketplace they have themselves in a vendor relationship, and that's kind of painting yourself in a box. That's not necessarily where you want to be, because vendors are treated typically poorly. It's all about price, and there's a whole lot of vendors out there in the marketplace. So my first thing, anytime that I'm developing relationships with folks is this somebody that I can see myself with? It's a relationship. Do I want to be with this person? And what does that look like? So you start off, first and foremost, being a partner. the other big takeaway that I've had in my business dealings is looking at decisions and understanding the structure of these partners. I think certainly with COVID, it taught us that this needs to be a dynamic situation, right? So if we get into relationships where it's a long, drawn-out decision-making process, if we there's committees, there's this or that that's going on, we as partners, as providers, we're just sitting there. We're waiting for things to happen, and that for us, I mean, we're solution providers. We want to fix things. We want to make things right. We want to help you. Those decision-making structures that get drawn out get to be kind of frustrating. I think for all of us. So we need to understand our partners. We need to understand not only how they make decisions, but we need to understand their businesses as well. I also like to use another nugget of knowledge is, and I've just kind of learned this. I realized that I've done it for years, but now it's actually became a point of fact. I like to use the 3 points of influence model. Right. So a lot of us, Matt may say, hey, well, I know this guy, he owns a business that's, maybe it's an aviation shop, or maybe it's, whatever happens to be. I know the owner. Great. You know the owner. But who else do you know within the organization? How can you try to drive that change? So I've really, certainly with this whole pandemic situation, if you've got a good trust relationship with these partners, the owner, the CFO, somebody that's maybe in customer service. And by leveraging all of those 3 people, you can try to drive some of your change forward and try to get things done. And as we see the slide that's popping up, the best metric to look at segments, it's like a good investment strategy, right? Diversification. If you find yourself in a situation where all you're doing is supporting the retail sector or service sector, you've had a tough slog during some of this likely. So, for my business is, I'm doing manufacturing, I'm doing professional services, construction, retail. I've got a little bit of everything. Sure, I had some retail exposure that was in there. But try not to put all your eggs in a basket. A lot of folks they'll get into the healthcare model, for instance, and it's extremely lucrative, certainly. And you become an expert in that industry. But everything can and is cyclical. So if you find yourself in a situation where you've got a downturn in the economy and that's your exposure, be careful of that.
Right.
Big time. And what's really interesting, so first of all, that is some solid practical advice. And I think Matt has something to share, which is a little bit like on the other side of that coin, which is about cutting costs or saving costs and ways to save money.
Oh,
Matt, what do you have to say around growing revenue by saving money?
Excellent point. So at the end of the day, it's not all about what's coming in, but it's about profit margins. You can increase profit margins by, decreasing your overhead, right? So one of the easiest things you can do, especially for those of us that find during these types of events, we're not constantly out or communicating with customers. If you've got, an hour or two that you're sitting at your desk postulating, hey, what do I do? What's my next move? Then you should probably either be blogging or something, doing marketing of some kind, or doing some kind of internal audit. Basically, every line item on your expense, you should be able to call up your internet provider, for example, your data center provider, if you still do that kind of thing, insurance companies, cell phones, voice over IP, et cetera. You can see if you're on the latest plans, see if there's a way, for example, with internet, a lot of times there's a way to increase bandwidth and decrease what you're paying for that bandwidth. So in some situations, you're going to find a win-win situation. And not only is this something that you can do internally for yourself, but for your clients as well. When you're doing this for your clients, this is a billable thing because you're putting labor into it. So you're okay. So you can get it at both ends. But just tightening your belt a little bit, doing audits of all of your overhead. This is the perfect time to do stuff like that.
Love it. And,
so
yeah.
the other part of this, Ari, I'm sorry. Yeah, boy, it's licensing. And with all the cloud model that's out, this is becoming more and more important. I'm sure that many of you out there probably already have procedures in place to do the cloud licensing audits that I'm talking about. But for those of you that don't, boy, doing this could really save you some money. Cloud licensing can really add up. Things like Office 365, your Adobe stuff, your QuickBooks Online stuff, any kind of antivirus or other third-party applications. It's going to be specific to your environment, but these are some of the common ones. But you need to spend some time thinking about what where you need to look. But the philosophy is what I'm trying to discuss with you about, taking a look at what your overhead is and making a few phone calls, doing a little bit of research, tightening your belt a little bit. And at the end of the day, you're going to feel good because you put a hard day's work and you're getting paid for it. You're getting paid for it every month, so it's just as good as adding a client, if in some cases not better.
Sure.
And what would you say about paying down interest-bearing debt faster?
Beautiful point. So especially those of you that may, have bought your own office or maybe have company vehicles, other kinds of loans and credit cards and things, paying down your interest-bearing debt faster is a really good way to save money. It costs you money today, but in the long run, it saves you money, right? So that's a really great thing to do if you can accelerate, payments on any kind of debt. And for those of you that are running a cash business, congratulations to you. But sometimes to grow, you have to take on some debt, and I'd say don't be afraid to do that, but be prepared to do things like paying down debt faster when you need to as well. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So we covered two sides of the coin, right? And I also want to hear Isaac's thought on this because you speak with customers day in and day out. But Daniel, when we first met about this topic, about MSP Minds Live, do you have to have a different perspective on like cutting costs or keeping costs, or do you think like if you make enough money per clients and revenue that it shouldn't be a factor? Do you how do you see just in terms of both sides of the equation?
I mean, I try to run things organically as much as I possibly can. I, as a general rule, don't take on a lot of debt. Sometimes you have to take on debt, obviously, but right. I tend to work on a little different model than a standard MSP would. I work a little bit more time and material, so I see things maybe a little bit more real time. I don't offer a lot of products per se. Where I have to, I'm buying materials and things of that nature. I let the partners do that for me. So I guess I have a slightly different perspective on it. So I'm a little bit more fiscally conservative that way.
Daniel, to your point about relationship building and, always talking about pricing, did any of that conversation change given the COVID atmosphere right now, that climate? I mean, naturally, these are relationships, like you said. These are not just your customers, they're people that you're constantly, your partners. How does that dynamic change at a time like that?
So one of the different things that I do with my particular model is, like I said, I'm an MSP, but I'm kind of the anti-MSP. So instead of prepaying for block hours or prepaying for this or that or the other thing and selling products with markup and margin and also selling time, of course, my model doesn't quite work that way. I work more on a time materials basis, right? So everything that I do, I've got an on-site rate, I've got a remote rate that I do. The other material side of things, be it licenses, be it workstation servers, firewalls, switches, any type of materials, I do all those things at cost. So I don't have any margin on that side. So the conversation with the customers, with the partners, has been a very easy one. Simply, hey, I'm not making any more money off of you in this particular situation. If we need to protect additional endpoints out there, if we need to add some additional firewalls in place as we decentralize and push things out, here's the cost.
Right.
You
Right.
can buy it if you're buying it from, vendor XYZ, whatever happens to be, or I'm buying it from vendor XYZ, here's the cost. So for me, it's actually been a very easy conversation because I am so transparent about where my margins are. I make money on time. I sell time.
Right.
That's what I do. That's what I've always done. If we need other materials and whatnot, let's figure out a way together that we're going to pick those things up. So it's been an easy conversation to add on different infrastructure during this time.
Yep. And I think that works with the trust that you're building with your partners at the end of the day. And that's why they feel confident working with you. And to Matt's point, I mean, I couldn't agree with him more. We could take this opportunity to say, oh no, sit there and say, oh, this is a terrible time. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And, Matt, everything you said is, instead of sitting at home and gaining those calories, eating everything in the fridge, working, I mean, getting things done. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a great perspective and a great take on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It reminds, this kind of thing reminds me of when I first started the business. You wake up day one and I'm going to start an MSP. Okay. So what do you do day two? Some people will think all day and tell friends and hope that, they accumulate some clients. But the key is that figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to write a blog every day? Are you going to go and pound the pavement? Are you going to make phone calls? Are you going to, what are you going to do and stick to it and do it every day? If you're not doing anything, then you need to look at your task list and say, hey, I need to get busy doing these things. Doing nothing results in nothing. So.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Matt. So, and that's something I think I certainly do, and I think we all need to do is, if it's Monday and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do for the week, you're already behind the curve. So you should have figured out on Friday what you're going to do for the upcoming week and have that roadmap laid out there. So you're having conversations with partners. So you're following up on certain things. I mean, just be proactive on it because, like to Matt's point, nothing equals nothing.
And Ari, I did want to make one important point that I forgot to include in that. That's that, with the licensing models, 365 and all these sorts of things, the internal technology stack that we use, not necessarily the ones that we're offering our clients, is really important. I think that, the Atera pricing model, the disruptive pricing that you guys offer is fantastic. I think that you guys have been an important tool for us. Having used many RMM platforms in the past, I can tell you that when we made the change, it was a good choice for us and given us a lot more flexibility on our own pricing model and our own internal operations. So kudos to you guys for engineering it that way because I think it's beautiful.
Thanks
so
Matt.
much.
Really appreciate it. And also want to mention you because also in the Facebook group, I don't know when COVID originally hit that you mentioned something, behind the scenes, we're obviously working a lot and you said something that, as an MSP, I really appreciate the amount of innovations and contributions that Atera is doing. So I also want to appreciate you, for calling that out and mentioning that. And yeah, good man. Just increase the
credit where credit is due. You guys have been doing great. I and many others appreciate it.
Good man. We appreciate you. We appreciate Dan. We appreciate both of your perspectives. Lots going on, lots to cover. We still have a lot more things to cover. And Matt, what would you say in terms of additional services that you can offer? And I loved what you emphasized about that people legitimately need.
Yes. Okay. So this is the other end of it, right? We're talking about tightening our belt to reduce overhead. And now this is where we add an additional stream of revenue. This can be done in a number of ways, but first and foremost, you want to make sure that your profit margins are going to be reasonably good. And two, you need to make sure that they're legitimately needed by your customers. There's lots of stuff out there that you could sell people and the profit margins might be good. But at the end of the day, we're investing ourselves in making long-term relationships with people. And so we need to do the right thing, right? And select products and services for the right reasons, not simply financially focused on that. So what we're doing internally is we've actually developed a security SaaS offering called Aip Defense. You probably see in the background here, I've been working this morning on it, but This is something that we've done because we saw a need in the market for a reasonably priced security product that could protect, exposed servers and that sort of thing. Everybody's familiar with ransomware and, all of the increased, RDP attacks and the brute forcing that's going on. And it's only getting worse with artificial intelligence and things, encryptions and passwords going to be able to be broken easier. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to have a little bit more security, but the problem with security much of the time is that it's very expensive. And so Aip Defense was our solution, and that's going to enable us to add an additional revenue streams that we can sell to our customers. We also have an MSP program that will open up a revenue stream on kind of a wholesale side of that software for MSPs so that they can generate about 950% ROI on the product. So it's very good profit margin. So that's kind of something that we're doing internally, but not to push my own product too much. I mean, again, it's the philosophy of it. We decided to expand our business into developing the SaaS thing. Before that, we had two other options that we considered. Okay, maybe we'll do a retail computer store. And the second option was maybe we'll do get into the smart home business. And so we experimented with both of those ideas a little bit to figure out which direction we wanted to go before we committed to Aip Defense about 2 years ago. It's about doing your due diligence as well. But in terms of COVID specific solutions, I mean, VPNs, remote access, security type functions, managed firewalls, et cetera. Even the remote access, the splash top that Atera offers that's integrated is a fantastic addition to the platform. All of these are ways that MSPs can absolutely make money and absolutely make, residual income. Which is, if you're anything like me, I prefer the residual over the one-time project revenue, but obviously we'll do it either way. So.
Love it. And is that something you would, let's say there's an MSP listening right now and he's like, okay, those are great ideas. And right now I'm not leveraging that for an additional revenue stream, or maybe I'm doing that anyways. What would you suggest to someone to initiate that conversation with a current client?
Well, first of all, it's important when you're evaluating a product to have a way to communicate its value to the customer. Atera does a pretty good job of doing this with reports. Most often, this is probably what you're going to find with MSP type products, right? You're going to send some kind of report to the customer, say, hey, look, in Atera's case, here's all your endpoints. Here's a plethora of information about them, patch status and antivirus status and so on and so forth. What processes and RAM. And so it's very valuable information that they can see very quickly. Hey, this is what I'm doing. So setting up automated reports is a really great way to show the customer value. I think if you can do that, they see the need for it and it's legitimate, then you're, you'll be able to approach that person, with a valid reason that they need the product. And it should be a fairly easy sell unless you're talking about, some kind of very expensive project related thing. But on these residual sales that you're making on, security products and that sort of thing, should be a fairly easy sell as long as you're showing value.
Love it. That seems like a really simple solution. Dan, what are your thoughts on that? I love how simple that sounds. Like click report. You see what they're already doing. Here's a service that you already need. Here's how I'm going to price it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo everything that Matt has brought up so far. I mean, I'm looking at, our next slide that we're talking about are, the remote secrets. So what's been the impact of?
But we'll just go straight there. Let's just go.
Yeah, I want to go there because that's where my head is right now.
No time to wait for this.
Well, you know what? Because I'm gonna echo a lot of what Matt said. So I'm just gonna jump right to it. So I don't sound like I'm a parrot. But I mean, the biggest thing that I think we've learned through all this COVID craziness is we can do this, right? So we can decentralize. I mean, all of us that are MSPs and IT guys and gals, sorry, IT folks, IT professionals, we've known this for years. And kudos to all of us, because we've been the heroes throughout all of this. We've allowed all these people to go, hey, wait, I can't get at my database, or I can't do this, or how do I get to the cloud, or how do I get this VPN set? Boom. We've just proven our value to all of these folks. So life will go on. Life, will be okay. And now the biggest takeaway, I think, in all of this decentralization is, what do we do as MSPs to continue to show value and grow our businesses throughout all of this? I'm going to echo one thing that Matt also said about Atera. Any folks that are on here right now that are either current MSPs or obviously looking for other products that are out there, I'm seeing a few things that are coming over on the chat side. One of the reasons that I chose Atera, and I've used a number of different ones, and I swear I've demoed all of them. I played with them all. One of the reasons that I settled on Atera was the way they do the licensing, right? So the unlimited, it's the technician license base and unlimited endpoints. Right now, the biggest thing that we should all be doing, if you're not doing it right now, is making sure that you're blowing, if you're using Atera's product or whatever product that you're using, hopefully you're using Atera's, you blow out their agent across every single thing that you have, and you're utilizing the remote, you're utilizing the backups. There's 2 different backups that are available. They're both awesome. If you like the WebRoot AV, use that. Get your firewalls in place, get whatever security gateways that you have in place, so you've got single sign-on management, so you're getting everything down to a pane of glass so you can look at things. One of the things that I use on my partners is, if you can't manage what you can't see, right? So if you don't have your tools in place, if you're not getting your alerts, if you're not getting your remote, all of these things, remember what shortcomings that you had when it was March 17th or March 18th, or whatever area of the world that you're in when all this stuff hit. What were your first thoughts when all this happened? For me, it was just like, oh, I didn't get this in, or I didn't have, you're thinking about all the on-site things, and like, oh, I should have done this, I should have swapped this switch out. Those are the things that you should be hunkering down right now and really working on those shortcomings. So if we do get a second round of this, or whatever has to happen, just a general cleanup, you're shoring up all those loose ends right now. And Matt also touched on that too, and I love what he's doing with his new security solution. I did some lookup on it and did a little research on it. It's a great product. I think for MSPs, I always advise people, be sticky. Find as many possible services as you can, be proactive, quarterly reviews, scheduled meetings, provide as many layers of support and service as you possibly can to be that go-to expert for all of your partners out there. So you want to grow that relationship. And I think there's no better way than being sticky in those relationships.
For sure. And I also think that based on everything both of you have just said, I think the conversation going forward with new clients especially is just changed now. I mean, the world of remote is going to become so much more prominent. And now it's a matter of, okay, how many of your employees are going to be working from home? How many of the devices do they have at home? What do we need to set up? There's going to be a shift, and it's something that we need to start getting ready for. We're already there, and now we need to apply that going forward without question. Yep.
And I've went, and I'm sure Matt's done the same thing too. I'm like, I want to get in, even though if it's a remote office / a home office, whatever it happens to be, I want my tools in there. I want to be able to have visibility in there. Yeah, it's a little Big Brother-ish sort of, but at least then you could help if I can get my security products in there, if I can get my, the firewalls, the gateways, whatever it happens to be, just so I have some sort of visibility to it. I want that. I want that more than ever. So yeah, it's a little bit of spend sometimes for the customers, for the partners, but I think going forward, it's the right thing to do because we can provide them a better level of service.
For sure. And a better user experience without question.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so speaking of remote, so things go remote. You're no longer in the office. You're no longer on site. Matt, what are some of your tips around leveraging this actually as an opportunity to create an even closer relationship with your clients and partners?
Okay. Well, you know, I guess the number one thing I would comment on that is that you've got to be a little bit flexible. I've actually had people come to my house to pick up a part, you know, or a computer, you know, something of that like that. You know, flexibility. I think if you had to sum it up in one word, keeping the lines of communications open. You know, using your social media, you know, just doing your emailing, you know, that kind of thing. I think, you know, the best opportunity to really sit down and communicate with your partners, as Dan calls them, I love that, is, you know, your annual audit. I think that's really the time to do it. You know, where you can sit down with them and, you know, audit their Active Directory, you know, talk to them about their business, where they're at now, where they're going. And here's the one question you always want to ask: what are your pain points, right? If you're taking care of their pain points, they're going to love you.
Right.
When they come to your house, are you cooking for them? Is your wife cooking for them? Is it like is it hospitality?
Fortunately, I haven't had to do any of that. I haven't had to entertain yet.
Okay.
Although that is something that we do. We do throw a Christmas party for our customers, and occasionally a happy hour or something along those lines. But don't do a lot of entertaining at the house.
Okay. Good to know. That's cool. I just have the image. I think it's just it's also a brilliant and innovative thing of you know, client attraction through hospitality. Who knows? It could work because it also creates a certain intimacy, friendliness, different kind of vibe. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty innovative. And so yeah, there's a lot to talk about the remote thing. I think each of these topics can go on, and I know Matt and Dan, you guys could write books on each of these. But let's start getting into a little bit about what's going to happen or potentially happen in post-corona. You know, what are different models? You know, I know, Dan, you covered it a little bit, but what would you talk about in terms of, you know, potential new businesses to work with? A lot of people are struggling. You know, what I was doing wasn't working. So what's a new way that could work? Maybe that's working for you.
I think the other thing that I'm doing, and certainly Matt touched on it too, is doing the audits. Let's go back and let's look at everything that we've been doing, how we've been supporting these businesses out there, and let's figure out what's been working and what hasn't been working. Maybe there's some fat that we can trim off. Maybe there's some other things that we can lean up. There's some spend that we can do, get some budgets to make, you know, do things a little bit smarter. I think is probably the biggest thing right now, because what business hates most, business, the stock market, anything, is the unknown and fear, you know, and ambiguity. And there's a lot of that's going on right now. So, you know, as a provider, I mean, of course, you got to understand who you're dealing with too. I mean, they're businesses too. So to come to them, you know, if Matt or I were going to them and say, hey, you need to drop 10 grand and you need to, you know, throw these endpoints in, or you need to do the, you know, these security modeling, whatever it happens to be that we're throwing in, that's tough. That's spooky right now. So I'm having a lot of open and honest conversations with folks of just getting everything out there and say, okay, here's what we got. Here's what we know that works. Here's, if we have some pain points, like Matt said, and some vulnerabilities, let's talk about those things. Let's figure out a budget. Let's figure out a time frame, and let's prioritize all those things. What really needs to be done in order for you to be successful as things change.
And you know, and any final thoughts just before we hear from Ed? And just one thing, just want to mention, we are getting a number of questions, and we're going to get to QA soon. I know people are excited about asking Matt and Dan themselves. But Dan, any final thoughts that you want to share?
So I jotted down just a couple different things that I wanted to chat about, and obviously I'm a relationship guy. I think we're all, you know, if we're solution providers in this business, we're all pleasers. You know, we are what we are, right? So my biggest thing that I always talk about is we're selling trust to folks. You know, it's relationships and it's trust. We always need to be cognizant of our role and what that means, you know, in the bigger picture. we've talked about, and we didn't touch on it here. I see, and we could talk about it in the Q&A too. I see a lot of people that are talking about price and whatnot. You know, they're worried about the price of a particular tool, or say, you know, network discovery on the Atera side. How obviously we're all here to be successful, to make money, but the temptation is always to, you know, the world is ending, so I have to drop my prices. Be very careful. I in a previous life, in a previous business, I made that mistake, and that's a very expensive education, because once you do that, it is extremely difficult to kind of claw your way back up to where the market should be again. I just think it's a road to the bottom, and then nobody winds up being happy if you do that. The other biggest takeaway, and then I'll shoot it over to Matt, would be there's a lot of MSPs out there, right? Ton of MSPs that do what we do. There's some really, really good ones, there are some terrible ones, and there's a whole bunch of folks that are in the middle. I'm really big on asking the question, what is your differentiating value as an MSP? Why are you different? Why is Matt different than myself, or, you know, anybody else that's out there listening to this? That's an important question. If you can get that in your head, you can get that elevator speech, that, you know, 30-second elevator speech of why you rock. That's going to take you a lot farther, because you can get in and out of your own headspace and get in front of that potential a lot easier.
Love it. And Matt, what would your advice be for how an MSP could be best prepared for a potential second wave of Corona, or just continuing on forward?
Well, I think that, you know, some of the advice that Dan gave earlier, I'm gonna echo that. I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna find out what you've been doing right, what's been profitable. You're gonna do more of that, and the things that have not been so successful, you'll either re-engineer that, right, or you'll just maybe not offer that, or not market it so heavily. And for each MSP, that could be different, right? I've seen MSPs with focuses on security, backups, you know, just, you know, the maintenance, you know, so you really just need to figure out what you're best at, you know, price that service accordingly, and if that's what you do well, do more of that. It's really that simple. The hard part's doing the due diligence, is that's, you know, running your reports, looking in your books, you know, talking to your bookkeeper or accountant if you have one. If you don't, you know, you may have to educate yourself a little bit on how to kind of compile some analytics that are going to, you know, show you the information that you're looking for, to be able to calculate what your profit margins are, and, you know, what's working for you and what's not. But once you've got that information, you can make wise decisions. I think that's, yeah, the bullet list here is perfect. You know, looking back at the troubles the first time around, what can you do to re-engineer things? And that's really, you know, we need to be thinking like engineers. You know, it's up to us to solution things internally in your business, as well as for your customers on a technical type project function. What upset customers? You want to retain customers. That doesn't always mean keeping everybody happy at the same time. And Dan, I think you would agree that not every customer is a good fit. I think maybe you touched on that earlier when you were talking about partnering with people. We're not, you know, in our industry, we're not, you know, an electrician or a plumber that would come out to provide a one-time service. We are actively managing their environment, right? We're an important part of their business. We have more access to information than maybe the CEO of a company, you know. So, you know, the role that we're all playing is very important. So don't forget that. Don't sell yourself short when it comes to pricing and that sort of thing. Know your value, and you know, work to build, you know, healthy relationships with your customers. Occasionally, you might have to fire a customer. That's a whole nother topic, but wouldn't necessarily encourage you doing that during these times. But there are times that you can do that, probably again a topic for another time. But it's something that you may want to think about doing if you get in cases where you're running into issues recurring with a particular customer or something.
And Matt, I wanted to just chime in on that one piece, because I think that's super important what you're talking about, and that's just, I think that's just within the business, as it's a maturity thing being an MSP, right? So if you're just starting out, and I'm seeing some things in the chat here that are coming in, how do you do your pricing? How do you do this? It's obviously some entry level folks that are just getting in the biz. As you get more mature in this industry, it's the 80-20 rule, right? So you will spend 80% of your time on 20% of the clients that might be problematic and may or may not have the best margin for you and for your business. And it's with that maturity that you'll understand that it's okay to say no. You can do that. Can you fire a client? Yes. I think it's important to be able to be okay with saying no and being able to let somebody go and let somebody else try to deal with them. So if folks are worried about, and again, it's a maturity thing, if you worry about the money, you're going to make bad decisions. So it's more about the relationship. Without the relationship, there's no money.
One last point there, Dan. Atera also allows you to charge different customers different rates. Just food for thought.
They do. Absolutely. Yep.
Matt, I think we're going to have to bring you on for like an official You guys are like official spokespeople.
Seriously. So on that topic, let's jump in here. It's the live Q&A. Ari, we want to start with what has changed for you most during this time? Each of you?
I can grab it first. I think, the biggest frustration thing is I'm a face-to-face kind of guy. I'm a meeting kind of guy. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I like to have that interaction with the partners, and not being able to do that has been kind of a struggle. It's been a bunch of fits and stops. We talk about certain plans, and then we have to kind of wait to see what we're allowed to do in this marketplace. So that's been my biggest challenge.
I'll chime in there. Ours is a little bit different. I think logistics has changed for us. We working in a one central office, we had, the ability to have parts and things shipped in centrally. Now we're having to kind of distribute those amongst, various home offices, if we ship a part in or something, computer, what have you. And then, of course, there's a little bit more driving. Our customers aren't centrally located either. So we may have 3 tickets for one company, but each one of those people are at different locations and they may require on-site. So the logistics, again, has been huge. That and, having to play a little musical chairs with maybe a tool that we maybe only had one of or something. So, we've had to purchase a few extra things so that people could have something at home and things being decentralized a little bit, in terms of logistics have caused a little bit of administrative overhead, but, certainly those things are solvable just with time.
Exactly.
So we've had to explain in a couple of situations to customers where normally we don't charge trip charges, but in this circumstance, we're going to have to, do something on that, and people have all understood. So I think for us, that was the logistics is the biggest issue.
And I think that's expected. I mean, it's a different climate now. Things are changing. We are having to resort to different solutions, think, outside the box and finding a way to just best meet our customer demands at the end of the day. Like you both mentioned earlier, we're service oriented. We need to go and do what we have to make sure that our customers, our partners are happy and making sure we're meeting their needs. With that being said, we have a question from Saed Munir. How are you guys figuring out your market value for your products, what you're selling? How are you aligning yourself relative to your competitors, whether locally? Are there any tips that you guys have within this regard in terms of pricing your services and making sure that you're, doing right by yourselves, by your company? How are you setting yourself up?
That's a complicated question. Because you have to evaluate each one of the products or services that you provide individually. And there could be some variables there that may be different for me than another MSP because of the way your model is set up or what have you. For example, we can take an off-the-shelf product and then turn it into what we call a managed product by simply managing it for the customer as opposed to just selling it to them. And so we'll need to add some labor hours to that for the administrative overhead for management, right? To be able to price it appropriately and so on and so forth. So you can kind of make some guesstimates to start, but the real number and the real data is going to come out after the fact, right? After you've set these services up as managed, for example, and you can run a report. You can look at how many hours you spent on the actual true management of that. For example, if it's a spam filter or if it's some kind of a security product, you're not going to know going into it how many hours it's going to require. In 1 month it may require two hours, and in the next month it may require 10. You're going to want to average those, probably across, a quarter or a year, whatever you're comfortable with. But it's going to require, a pen and paper and a calculator, right? You're going to have to sit and think about all the variables involved and what that service is, what all goes into it in terms of your labor, your cost from the vendor, and then, creating some averages, looking back at, again, what you've dumped into it, if it's an active kind of managed thing. If it's something you're just selling, that's fairly easy. You just, take, the costs and, decide what your profit margins should be.
Right.
If you wanted to even, make a couple of phone calls to get some proposals from other IT companies, I've done that in the past. We also network with a couple of local IT companies, and we occasionally talk about, how they're pricing themselves as well. And then you can decide if you want to be on the top end of that, the low end of that, or in the middle somewhere. But I mean, that's a generic answer. Dan, any input on that?
Yeah, same. I mean, the thing to remember is it's all what the market will bear. So my market in Minneapolis may be different than, your market down in Texas or East Coast, West Coast, or in New Zealand. They're all different.
Right.
And I think that's important. Matt's point is important. It's knowing what your value is as an MSP. Obviously, we have different certifications, we have different criteria, we have different experience levels, all of that jazz. And Matt may be able to solve something infinitely faster than what somebody else is on a lesser price point or whatever that happens to be. You have to factor all those things in. We all have different experience levels. It's kind of knowing what the market will bear, number one. And then figuring out where you want to be.
Great. And we have a couple of people asking about your approaches to actually obtaining new clients, especially given this current climate, maybe specifically, but are you using any marketing approaches? What's working for you guys? And this could go back into our earlier discussion about, working on different verticals. Is the approach going to be different with each vertical that you're approaching? Any thoughts on this?
I was going to say everything I've done has been organic over the years. I think word of mouth and just network. You can't know enough people. And I saw somebody, Frank, I have to scan back up, but Frank had mentioned something about the 80-20 rule. And, he said, well, the 80-20 rule is correct. However, you don't know who those people know, which is 100% true. You have to be, have some discretion and diligence about how you're treating everybody. Right. But I think you can, with social media being what it is, I mean, it's such a diverse market soup that's out there that it's kind of fun now to be able to market yourself. It is, back in the good old days, you'd place an ad in a phone book, whatever that is, or you do things kind of gritty. Now you can do things kind of fun. But what I do is I just talk to everybody. There's nothing better than that. I mean, that's free, and you don't know who somebody else might be tied to.
I've done a lot of things over the years to market and try and get customers, some really silly things. some things I came up with a term called guerrilla marketing, where we would, when I had virtually no budget, I'll give you an example of one of the things we did. Not necessarily advocating these types of things, but we did them nonetheless. For example, if some of you out there are familiar with Redbox, it's basically a vending machine where you can get a movie. So we figured out how to put a business card in the DVD case. And then we figured out that the machine would not charge you for the DVD as long as you returned it within a couple of minutes. So we rented a bunch of DVDs around, the area and put business cards in the CD, cases, and then people that rented them. That was great for residential business. So we've done silly things like we've gone into, buildings that we were working in, and, put business cards into the doors after hours. And, we've done all kinds of silly things, guys. But we've done email campaigns, we've done commercials, social media, networking groups. For a time, I spent every meal at a networking group, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you just, if you come up with an idea, and as long as it's not malicious or against the law, innovation is what gets people's attention. So that's it.
Never underestimate the power of donuts.
That's a great point. Pizza and donuts many times.
My God, I've gotten more business off of donuts than simply just, like Matt said, you're in a business, you're in an area, go knock on a door and drop somebody. Who's going to say no to donuts? Everybody says yes, especially if it's early in the morning. Everybody lets you in the door and just leave a business card. You'd be surprised the amount of return that you're going to get on, $10 worth of donuts.
But munchkins or, donut glaze, what are we going with?
Mix it up. A little bit of everything.
Matt, as soon as you preface that by silly, I was like, this is probably going to be genius work, very innovative, effective, and it's all that and more. And I've seen a bunch of comments. People are pretty excited about that. The donuts, the pizza, all of it. Brilliant. I think that's a great way to finish this. And I think what we'd also like to offer is that a lot of people, there's so many questions, we're not going to get to it. We could probably spend another hour with you wonderful, awesome IT service providers, MSPs, Matt and Dan, and we would still be getting questions. And if you guys are open to it and if people are interested, I think we'd like to say we might be just do a live Q&A sometime next week just to answer all these questions. Also saw one comment, one guy said that this was, I don't want to say one guy, Tim Inman said this is one of the best webinars he's attended post-COVID. So thanks to everyone for putting in the time and energy. And I think we'll do a live Q&A if you guys are open to it, if you guys want to join everybody all over the world who's listening. And just final thoughts, final suggestions, final insights, final donut recommendations.
Ari, I would love for everybody, if you're interested, if you want to keep in contact with me, to find me Facebook, LinkedIn, I'll definitely friend you. So any questions you might have, or if you just want to network a little bit, hit me up.
And I would 100% echo what Matt just said. You can find me all sorts of different ways. Maybe, Ari, if you want to be a gatekeeper and be able to share at least my contact information. I've been doing this a lot of years, and I've made some awesome home runs, and I've made some colossal mistakes. And that's how we learn, right? So I am more than happy to share both the colossal mistakes and the home runs of what I would do and what I wouldn't do, because I've been in your shoes. If you're starting out, I know it. It's spooky, and you don't always have people to talk to. You can't ask your customers, you can't ask your clients, your partners what you should do, because they're going to give you 100% different answers than what you probably should be doing. So more than happy to chat with anybody.
Thanks, guys. Also, just want to mention there will be a summary of the webinar with a recap of the main points. The donuts, the hospitality as client attraction. There was a lot of highlights. This is a lot of fun, very insightful, and already saw a lot of comments of people wanting to join the live Q&A. So on the Atera blog, atera.com/blog, we're going to post a recap, video. And I think this is just the beginning of MSP Minds Live. And just Matt and Dan, and obviously the awesome and wonderful Isaac Eliyahu. Just want to thank you guys for your time, for your insights, for all the amount of time that you took to prep for this, for showing up, for helping the wonderful people, the Atera community, the IT community. This has been fantastic. Thank you. And the best is yet to come. More good stuff to come. Thank you, guys.